So joining me today is Justine. She's the founder of the Bumpy Career, a blog on interning and job hunting for Filipino college students, a category operations executive at Unilever, and the speaker and consultant on personal branding and Gen Z career and personal development. Justine, how are you?
Thank you so much for inviting me over, Trey. I'm doing well. I hope you're doing well as well while we're
I
all at
am. I'm
home.
doing quite well. It's quite funny. I've been following you on Twitter for a while, but we've never met personally. So before this show, I was going through the usual research that I do when a guest comes on.
Mm.
And as I was going through your profile, I Googled your name, all that stuff. I found out that you're actually friends with Nate Punzalan, which is super
Yes,
cool. And I only found
yes,
out like today, which is super fun. So I messaged him right away. I was like, bro, I'm gonna have Justin on the show. And he was like, oh, bro, you're gonna have a great time. And I was like, yeah, I think so too.
yes. I am course mates with Nate, and we were in a few classes together. And then, so like, I've seen him on his YouTube rise, and he's seen me go from slacker student to this person today.
Were you really a Slacker student?
I recently got my transcript of records back from Ateneo, and I also asked for what's my batch ranking. And the
Mm.
batch ranking paper says you are in the lower 50% of your batch. Like it doesn't say anything else. It's literally one sentence. You are in the lower 50% of the batch. And then
Okay.
up and I didn't realize this, but my cumulative QPI is a 2.7 out of 4. I was like,
Oh,
wow.
okay.
I was like,
Yeah.
wow, that's really low. I was like, I just realized. When
uh,
you
yeah.
taught them, they're all like B pluses and then D's. There
Yeah,
was
yeah,
like
yeah.
no in between.
Oh, okay. So you you did quite well in some subjects.
Yeah. And
And
then
then
some subjects I just literally showed up and did the bare minimum.
so you're now doing your blogging, your writing. Have you always loved writing?
I've always loved writing. I wanted to go and do AB English
Oh,
before
okay.
starting college. And my parents said, like, no, you will be, if you do that, you'll be a teacher after. We'd
Ah,
like you to do something practical. And
yeah,
so I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay, well, the closest thing to practical and also writing at that time was like communications, technology management at that
For
time.
sure.
That's what I ended up doing. But I've
That's where you
always
met
loved
Nate.
writing.
That's where you met
Yeah,
Nate.
that's how I met Nate. Of
Okay.
course.
And then how does your life now compared to when you were a kid? Like how you imagined it as a kid?
I think first off, I didn't realize what type of jobs existed out there when I was a
Uh-huh.
kid. When you're a kid, but the only things you know are like doctor,
Yeah.
engineer, architect, very
Yeah.
certifiable jobs.
Firefighter, nurse.
Yeah, exactly. It's some
Mm.
job can be where they come to you with problems and then you just solve them by like thinking it through logically. So
Right.
I would say like the little me would never have thought this was like a real job. And I don't think like little me would have realized that I want to do two jobs. I was a kid who just loved to read and job at
Mm-hmm.
Unilever, and I also maintained my other job of running the Bumpy Career. So I think
Right, right,
she'd be a little shocked.
right. What were the first steps that you took when starting the Bumpy Career?
So when I started it really didn't have a plan. I was starting it because I realized that people kept asking me the same questions again and again. And instead of me typing it out again and again every single time, I was like, maybe I should just compile the FAQs, write it all down
Right.
once.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
every time someone asks it again, I'll just send them the link and tell them, okay, read. If you have
yeah.
any new questions, let me know. I'll answer those. But
Right.
all in all, it was like it pretty much answered a lot of questions that people had like initially. And it was
Mm-hmm.
enough for them to get started like interning on their own,
Yeah.
deciding to job hunt on their own. And it's really just snowballed from there. The blog's core purpose is it answers questions that you and almost everyone around you would also have, like all the general questions
Right.
about interning and job hunting.
I find that really interesting because I ended up making my own business, so I didn't go through the
Mm-hmm.
usual job hunting
Yes.
space. I never got to have that. I mean, I interned here and there, yes, but I never
Mm-hmm.
got that certain experience. What are some of the most common questions that you get?
Like the first most common is should I go and work at a startup or should I go work
Oh,
in a corporate?
yeah.
Like everyone's asking me what should they do? Like
Uh
what do
huh.
I think they should do best? The next thing they ask is like if I decide to go into one track where I'm going to start my career interning in marketing, I'm going to have to do marketing forever is and
Oh,
then I would
okay.
say no, it's not, you can do more general things.
Right.
And then the next most common question I get is if I don't do any of these things, if I just wing it, what will happen to me? And
Okay.
then I tell them like, there's all these options. It really depends on your network and also who your
Right, for
parents are
sure.
and all of those things.
Yeah.
But like if you have certain goals, you have to start earlier to do certain things.
Yeah. When did you realize that you had something special with your blog? Like, when did you realize you were like, yeah, this is good?
I think I realized it the day after I posted the first blog
Oh,
post. I posted
okay.
it at like 11:30 p.m. on a Friday night.
Okay.
And then I literally just posted it saying, wrote up 15 frequently asked questions. And at the bottom of it, I had left a Google form that was anonymous. It said, if you have any other questions, feel free to throw it in here and I'll
Yeah.
answer them in the next blog post. So I went to
Right.
sleep. I woke up the next day and it had 500 reads overnight.
Wow.
And
Okay.
WordPress lets you know how this link gets shared.
Yeah.
That it got shared through like messages, like Facebook, like direct.
Oh, okay.
Checked the Google form and it had like 50 questions overnight.
Wow.
And I realized, oh my gosh, people really want to know about this. And they just
Yeah.
didn't know where to ask. And they were like, you know what? I'll ask this random girl who seems to be willing to answer my question.
Yeah. What's your story after college?
So after college or like starting? I started the blog in my sophomore
work.
year.
Okay, yeah. Starting from there, going on. How did you learn and attain all this information?
So very luckily, we had the 5-month summer transition in between like first year, second year. At the time, I knew I was failing a class. I knew it's the only F in my entire transcript. So I was failing a class and I realized I don't want to go to school. I didn't want to go to school for the 5-month break. I wanted to go and like take some time out.
Right.
And at that time, I had a friend who had gone to college in America. And then she was doing internships. She was like talking about that season. She was like talking about it. Snapchat was a big thing at that time.
Oh, yes,
I would just see her like working on those things. And I was like, why don't we do that here? Why don't we have that sort of thing? Because we have a similar system anyway to America. So I was looking into it. I was thinking about it all throughout Christmas break. So we start the semester in November. I knew I was gonna fail the class by December. I couldn't drop it.
Okay.
My parents said, don't drop it. Just keep going. Just keep trying. And I was like, I'm going to try, but I'm going to fail. And so the whole December, I'm researching, how do you do internships? How do you figure it all out?
Right.
And then I realized, there's not a lot of information about it in the Philippines. Yeah. And at that time, internships were something you only did in your penultimate year of college. And because you were required to. Nobody was willingly doing internships so much in 2015. And it just so happened that career fair for Ateneo was around late January, early Feb at that time, back from 2. And everything just kickstarted from there. I ended up going to Citibank for my initial first internship. They hired me in a 1-day event.
Okay.
Where everyone else in the room was penultimate seniors who needed to do this internship.
Yeah.
I was
for
literally one of 2 girls only there who were just there for fun. They hired me for that internship called Encompass from Philip Morris.
Yeah.
And at that time, there was like no information about it, zero at all. They just said like, come try this 1-day on-ground session, take these tests, you'll get an internship if you win afterwards. I just went to do it for fun. And then I got in and then I was like, well, I've taken a break from school. I want to just rest now. I just really wanted to lie down. And then I found out how much it paid. It was like in the 22,000.
Okay. Wow. For an internship?
For an internship? Yeah, for an internship. Yeah. It was like 21,000, 22,000, I think, at that time.
Yeah.
So it was huge. So it was like per month. And you're working for 2 months. So you can get both. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to go intern again. And then I did that.
Yeah.
And I met like a lot of good managers during that time. Some of them are still like my mentors to this day. And they were just like telling me all these things they need to fix. So I used to say like in almost every sentence. And I have a very high voice. And it talks very fast. So it sounds like a chipmunk sometimes. And they were like, you gotta work on that. But it has to slow down. It has to stop. Like you can't be both high and fast. You gotta pick one.
Okay.
So, they were saying things like that to me and it was helpful and it just really started from there. So because I was one of the very few people who were electing to do internships, I kind of figured it out. I had also applied to a bunch of other internships. I had gotten in, but I turned them down. And then I was referring my friends to go do some of them instead. And it just kept snowballing from there. I ended up getting into the competitions for Unilever and P&G near my penultimate year. And I ended up doing job interviews with them and a whole bunch of other companies. And at the end, I chose to go with Unilever for their management training program, the Unilever Future Leaders program. Right. And I've been here ever since. I cut the program short 2 years in, and I've been a category operations executive since then.
How many interviews have you been a part of?
Like for myself, I think I've been to maybe 70,
70?
80 interviews since 2015. Not
Yeah,
like
but
all in
yeah,
a row,
but
but like 70 interviews. I've probably done that.
okay. Then I would assume you know a lot about interviews if it's
I
70.
know a lot. Like I like figured it out. Everything I teach, like it's come because I've done it physically myself.
Yeah. What's your favorite interview experience?
My favorite interview experience was at Google because I did 3 rounds
Oh,
of like interviews to them,
okay.
and then all the information. Yeah, so all the information was from Google. So I was like reading it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I hope I do well. I hope I do well.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic hit, so I have no idea what was like the next step. I had 3 interviews, and
Mm-hmm.
then pandemic. At least I got to do the experience, and I got to see, oh, the articles online were right.
Right. Oh, so they are right. What's the most outstanding thing about it, or like what stands out the most about interviewing at Google? Is it the kind of questions, or is it like the way they
Yeah,
ask
they
stuff?
really ask you hypothetical questions. You don't need to know the exact answer, but you have to have
Okay.
a framework. You have to have a way of thinking, and you have to have a way of communicating to answer
Mm,
all of this.
okay. Without telling me where it is, what's the worst
Mhm.
interview experience that you've had?
The worst interview experience I had was them like asking me, when do I think I'm gonna get married?
Oh,
What
okay.
when do I think I'm gonna have a baby? And I look
Okay.
like this, so I look very young. So I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
do you think I'm gonna do that next year or something? I was like 22 at the time, so like
Uh-huh.
22, 21. And I was doing the
Uh-huh.
interview for fun. And then they were just asking me these things. And I was just like noting down, like in my head to write down, like, these are illegal interview questions. Like I
Yeah.
needed to go check with a lawyer, like, yeah, these are illegal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Why do you think they ask those questions?
I think it's one, they're trying to understand your future fit. Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe they have presumptions about what a married woman would do, what a pregnant woman would do. There's
Okay.
also, the operational part where if you get married or you get pregnant, you're going to be gone for a while, you're going to be distracted for a while. So maybe they don't want to get someone who
Yeah.
has these coming up distractions.
Right.
I also think that, it's a point of our culture where elders can ask all sorts of questions to people who are younger than them, and then
Mm-hmm.
younger people just have to answer.
What'd you do after you found out that it was illegal? Did you do anything about it? Did you
Like I wrote it
or
down, and then
okay.
I made it into a blog post saying like these are illegal interview questions. That if someone asks them to you, you can say back, um, before I answer, what would this information be used for?
Right.
Or you can just say that I don't feel comfortable answering these questions. Like, how is this related to the interview?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like politely saying, that's none of your business.
Yeah, yeah,
Why do you
yeah.
need to know?
Right. So I assume that you tried also conducting interviews? I assume you have.
Yes, I've like conducted a lot. So
What's
in
your favorite
another,
part about being on the other side?
my favorite part of conducting interviews. So I like to ask people what did they do for thesis? And then
Oh,
like
okay.
what did they learn from all of it? Because in my mind, thesis is a major work experience that we don't
Mm-hmm.
highlight in our resumes enough. Because you're working with a team for a prolonged period of time. You guys have stakeholders, you have goals, you have KPIs, you have to
Right.
work with so many people to get this done. And I think it's a good judge of character on what your feelings of your thesis are. Because if you can't remember a thing about it, it just tells me right away that it's either so traumatic you blocked it off, or you didn't do anything and you just had you had really nice people as group mates who
Yeah,
kept your
yeah.
name on it.
Right, right. What did you do for your thesis?
So our thesis for Commtech is a marketing plan paper. My group specifically did a marketing plan research on Anytime Fitness.
Oh, what about Anytime Fitness? I
So
mean,
we were looking at like how do they market themselves both as a franchise and as individuals, and what are things they could do to improve on so that they could get more sign ups and also more attention
nice.
for their 1 month free trial.
How did that go? Was there anything that sprung up from that?
So Anytime Fitness in the Philippines has one master franchisor, and then everyone else is a sub franchisor.
Okay, okay.
So I don't know if we even presented it to anybody. I know that we were relying on being friends with some of the
Oh, I
franchises.
see. All right, all right. Yeah, that makes sense. So, what's your favorite success story from the Bumpy Career?
My favorite success story, and I might cry when I say this because it's really my favorite. So I started the blog in 2016. In February 2017, I get this email from this girl. It comes in at like 2, 3 a.m. I read it when I wake up at like 9 or 10. And
Mhm.
it's very long. I would say, like, if you copy paste it into MS Word, it's something like 10 pages.
Wow. Okay.
And then in it, she just writes like her whole life story. She says, this is everything that's happened to me until this moment.
Mhm.
And roughly, her parents had died in an accident.
Oh,
And
wow.
then it was just her and her little sister. And then she said that what she decided was she's going to move them to Manila. And because she had gone on job interviews here. She had found my
Okay.
blog. She had learned a whole bunch of things from it. She decided to like fly herself here, do a few job interviews, and she ended up landing a job that paid her around 45,000 at a time. And she said,
Oh,
because of
okay.
you, like my sister and I are going to still have a normal life. We're selling off
Wow.
everything here. We're leaving our province. We're
Mhm.
moving there. She's going to go to university in
Wow.
UP Diliman, and I am going to go start working in Makati. And thank you for that. So that was the first part of the story.
Right.
Later on in like 2019, I was giving a talk at UP Diliman,
Uh huh.
and then it was to, I think, the School of Economics people. I gave a talk. It went over because I was answering all the questions. And then afterwards, I was just like walking to my car.
Mhm.
And there was a girl sitting on the steps. And then she stands up and she introduces herself to me. I think she just has questions. I'm like, okay, well, I'm happy to answer them
Right.
here. And then she goes, you're exactly like how my sister said you would be.
Oh.
And I was very confused. I had no idea what she
Yeah.
meant because I was like, who's your sister? I don't know. And then she explained that, oh, my name is blah.
Mhm.
My older sister is blah. She wrote you a letter years ago about like what your blog's done for us.
Right.
And then I was like, oh my gosh, that's so nice. I started crying because I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize it would have that effect. Like she was there, she was physically in front of me, the little sister.
Right.
And then at the start of this year, I got another email, but from the little sister this time, and she said like, well, I've graduated from college already,
Wow.
and I was reading your blog, and I ended up landing this job. So thank you. And because of you, our lives are like this. And then she wrote a PS saying, my sister also started reading the recent blog posts and she got a higher paying job. She's already at
Wow.
like this salary range. Thank you. And I was like, that's so amazing. I don't know these girls. Like I only met her because she specifically came to seek me out.
Right.
And I didn't write any specific advice to them. I didn't know
Mhm.
what their problems were. I don't even think I gave that great an operational bit of advice. I think I just gave them a lot of courage to go after whatever it is
Mhm.
that they wanted.
Right.
And it had this huge impact on them that I would never be able to like fathom on my own.
Yeah.
And I think that's like one of the nicest parts of the things I do, because it's just free and it's out there and anyone can read it. Like people can just take that information and do whatever they want with it.
Right. How does it make you feel? The fact that you're able to impact people's lives that way.
So I'm very sickly. I'm a big believer that at any moment I could like die. And I did
Okay.
get surgery
Okay.
in late 2019 because I suddenly just got sick and all of that.
Okay.
And so my main thesis in life is to live an interesting life. And that if I were to leave this world tomorrow, I would be perfectly fine. Like
Mhm.
I've done everything I wanted. I said everything I wanted to say. Peace out, totally fine with me.
Yeah.
And so the nicest thing for me about the blog, like the way it makes me feel, is that every day I know it helps at least one person.
Mm.
And I also know that when I'm gone, like it will still be up there for as long as I've paid the like domain registration.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And even if like the information will be out there somewhere.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
someone somewhere will still use it. Someone
Yeah,
can just
yeah.
like copy paste it
Right, right.
and then just say, this is my blog post. And then they can spread it out to like thousands of people and then they can help those thousands. But at the end of the day, we all know it came from me first.
Yeah. So when you make let's say you make a blog or you make a certain piece of advice, do you do it with a certain person in mind? Or do you just try to be as general as you can?
So when I was younger, I used to write it to younger me. And how
Mm.
I always wrote it was like, kind of like an older sister who was lecturing someone younger. Like, this is
Okay.
exactly how you do it. Like, you got to do it this way.
Yeah.
Don't make the same mistakes I did. Now I write it more like an upperclassman, just like talking to a younger person, like in general. Like, this is the general advice. This is how you should do it. And there are some things that don't go away. So I'm very sarcastic, and I'm kind of sassy, and so
Okay.
that comes out in the work. Like, I think I have a blog post about the cover letter where the ending of it just says that if the job posting said no cover letters, why are you even reading this article? Like, that's the last line.
Mm.
And
Okay.
then so
Yeah.
many people have like just like, quoted it back to me saying that like I read the blog post, I read that, and then like I just realized you're right. Why am I reading? Like, but it's so
I-
good. I saved it for future blog posts.
right.
I'm
Right.
like, oh,
What's been
I'm
your
always like
personal
lecturing
favorite?
them.
What's been your
Hmm?
personal favorite article so far?
Honestly, my most favorite article is the one I didn't expect to like do really well.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like literally what's the difference between a CV and a resume and just explaining the
Oh,
terminology.
but
I thought it
that's
was
great.
so basic.
Yeah.
So basic. And it has like tens of thousands of views. And
Nice.
people just write to me all the time saying, oh my gosh, I didn't know that was the difference. Because I just explained that, when a company says they want a CV, in reality, they want a one-page resume. They're just saying the word CV. They don't
Right.
know the difference either.
Yeah. Like
And
their own.
then,
Sorry. Go on.
no, it's okay. That one. And then my other favorite one is I wrote, like, how do you answer, like, what's your salary expectations, like, as a fresh grad?
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone just asks that. And I like the fact that because it has so much interest, it means that people are thinking of negotiating. People are
Yeah. Yeah.
thinking of like, how am I going to answer this question? They're not just going to willingly accept the first number thrown back to them. They're
Mm-hmm.
going to sort of like negotiate for higher, which I really appreciate because the more people do that, the more it becomes normal, the more the younger people are going to benefit from it.
So how do you negotiate a salary in your personal experience?
So this is my personal bias. This isn't the way that everyone should do it. But
Okay.
first, I would say that how good a fit are you for this role? So the better fit you are, the more you can, negotiate for higher.
Right.
The
Yeah.
next is who applied for this role? Did you reach out to them or did they reach out to you to apply for
Mm-hmm.
it? That also like pushes the power into your favor if they're running after you.
Mm-hmm.
Third is how many other people can do the exact same things you can do?
Right.
Like if you know, let's say 12 programming languages when everyone else just knows 3, then you
Mhm.
know you are a lot more in demand than them.
Right.
So I think it's first checking all of these factors. So how I do it with my students is that we go through their master file. We see how valuable are they compared to like other people in the same exact position as them, saying how much better are you and what are the things that set you apart.
Mhm.
And then after we get that, I like to put it against the job post. So when you look at a job post, let's say there's 10 bullet points. The first 5 are the requirements. The next 5 are a wish list.
Oh, okay.
Most
Okay.
people don't realize that you really just have to fit 50%. The rest you can just learn on the job
Right.
or you
Yeah,
can just
yeah.
figure it out. But honestly, if it's farther down on the list, it means it was something that they thought of at the end and then they just decided to tack on.
Mhm.
Because the most important stuff is up there already. Those
Yeah,
are the
yeah.
first things. And when all that comes out, then I would also just say that you need to calculate what's your ideal number. Like whatever this number is, that's going to be the very base of whatever you ask. And so
Mhm.
let's say your ideal number is 70. So you
Mhm.
shouldn't be saying, I'm okay with between 50 to 70. Because people aren't going to reach your ideal number. You're going to be disappointed because you set yourself up that way.
Yeah.
So you've calculated it. So you say, my ideal number is between like 70 to 90. So no matter what, your ideal number has been hit.
Mhm.
And if they don't hit your number, then because you've done all of this other work, you know all the other things about yourself and also what you want out of a job, you can negotiate for that.
Right.
So I always tell my students, like, if they're not willing to meet you on money, ask them to meet you in number of VLs and SLs. Ask them to meet you on extended benefits. Like, try to find other things that matter to you that don't cost as much money.
Right.
And then just ask for that instead.
I find that really interesting because, as I mentioned to you before, I did go through a bit of interview stages, but it's not like I was at that stage where, like, I never found a job that I loved. If you know what I mean. Like, that's why I ended up making a business. That's why I ended up doing all that stuff. Because I never found a job that I loved. What do you do when somebody doesn't get a job that they love?
I think Well, my very first question is, you shouldn't find a job that you love, because then it sets you up for like a lot of disappointment
Ooh.
and heartache.
Okay.
Because so many people attach their identities to like their job and their work, and I always ask them, the moment you get sick, the moment you stop being good at your job, what happens to you? What happens to your identity? What happens to your sense
Uh-huh.
of self? Because that really hurts. So like I said, I'm very sickly, so if I attach myself to like the quality of my work, I'm going to be deeply disappointed sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
or often, because the moment I get sick, it's just I can't do anything for a while.
All right.
My next thing is, if you don't get the job that you really like, you need to figure out what parts of it did you like. Was it the prestige of the company? Was it the
Mm-hmm.
people who are working there? Is it the type of work that you're going to be doing? Is it the type of work it's avoiding? And then you need to find, where else can you find something similar to it. So the way I teach is, there's three tiers of companies always when you want to apply. First is moonshots. These are your dream companies that
Mm-hmm.
if you land there, you've achieved everything you wanted. This is your goal.
Yeah.
Second is mirror companies. So they're like on the same level as your moonshot companies, but there's something wrong about them. Like maybe they're based in Alabang and you live in Commonwealth,
Okay.
or
Okay.
they
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
work on Tuesday to Saturday instead of Monday to Friday. There's just one thing off about them that just makes
Mm-hmm.
you unhappy. But like you'd be fine there, and someday it would help you land at your moonshot.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third is like a safety net, which is you're fired today, you need money tomorrow, you have to
Yeah.
get hired
Yeah.
the day after. So these are just companies that you would apply to right away, no thoughts about that. And I always tell them that, you should start applying at jobs that you don't really care about first. That way, if they
Oh.
reject you or you get accepted, you still have options, you still have choices. You know that there are other people, other places that want you. And if you
Right.
get accepted and you don't want to go in, well, great. It's time for you to learn how to reject jobs.
Mm-hmm. How do you reject a job?
First, it depends on how much did you like the process of
Okay.
interviewing with them. And second is, do you still want to maintain good contacts with the people that you met there or with this job for
Mm-hmm.
the future? So if you don't really care about anything or any of them, tell them like, it was great learning about this. I had a great time. I found another opportunity. Bye. That's it.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
email once and never think again. If you like them, then you can also offer it to people in your network. There's someone
Oh. Okay.
similar to you who's
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
job hunting, probably, and then you can say, this isn't for me. I found a different opportunity. I'm going to pursue something else, but I'm very happy to endorse like 2 3 of my colleagues from my work, or people with similar skill sets that I'd be happy for you guys to interview as well. So that's another way to do it. And then
Right.
the last way to reject is like, you offer them, maybe not now, but like, do you want me to come on as a part-time or a consultant first, and then we'll like see if something works out for us later into the future. You
Right.
be creative and like the options for it.
Right. I found it really interesting because I actually found you on Twitter, which is funny
Mm-hmm.
because like what I mentioned, we never met. I saw you on Twitter. I've been following you for like a couple years now and everything like
Mm-hmm.
that. How did you start gaining that Twitter following that you have?
I would say it's because I make really good threads of either just telling a interesting story or just breaking down information very, very specifically for people. So nobody
Yeah,
else is like talking about job hunting on Twitter as much.
that's true. No, that's
So,
that's a big reason why I wanted you on here because
mhm,
you seemed very specific of a person that
mhm.
that no one else is doing exactly what you're doing. Like there are other
Yeah.
people who have job hunting articles as well, all that stuff. But there's something very specific with you, and because you understand the Gen Z, you understand that kind of generation. What's been the biggest difference you've seen so far between the previous generation and our generation when it comes to landing a job or getting recruited?
So I also have a lot of students right now who are like 10 years older than
Oh,
me.
okay.
And I have a lot of students who are 5 years younger than me.
Uh huh.
So I can really see the divide very
Right.
clearly. And I think one thing that's very different is that everyone who is older is willing to find a job that they can tolerate, that
Uh
they
huh.
are fine with,
Right. Right.
that it provides for them the stability, safety for them to do whatever they want to do in their off time. And usually that means traveling to Japan, Korea, Europe,
Yeah. Yeah.
Australia. Like that's their dream. For all the younger people, they're trying to find one job that fits all of their ideal standards.
Okay.
And I am very against that because I feel like, you shouldn't put all of your aspirations and dreams into one place. So I always tell them, let's divide it. Let's find you a hobby, a second job, whatever it is that you want to do that you do for your other goals. But to find a job that aligns with your life goal, all of your principles and standards, like your ideal salary, your ideal work-life balance, everything, like it's full of people your age as well who will be your new barkada and community and
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah.
Like trying to find all of that in one workplace is just setting yourself up for a lot of heartache.
Yeah. When is it okay to compromise?
When you have something that matters more. So I would say, like, for a lot of my students, they have big goals. They're saving up to go do a master's abroad. They have to fund their younger siblings to go to college. They
Right.
have
Yeah.
bills to pay or things like that. And so I always ask them that, we might find a job that fits all of your principles, goals, and salary. But do we have the time to really find that job? Because if we don't have that time, then we really have to like choose one that fits the salary first and then everything else later on.
Right. So when it comes to getting a job or when it comes to being part of a new company, what would be your biggest tips?
I would say my number one tip is for the first 9 months, you have to be super people. Like you
Okay.
can't slack off. You have to be like raise your hand, very cheerful, willing to do anything. Because you're making an impression that will last for a while on the people there. So you have to be like on your A game. I think that's one of the reasons I'm very reticent to go and like change jobs often, because that means you have to constantly be on high alert. You have to always be this top of your game person. Like you can't rely on your reputation or the good relationships you've built with people to let you sort of like ease on the brakes a little. That's my number one advice for anyone who's starting a new job. Like you have to be at the top of your game while you're there because it's setting you up. And you also have to understand like what's the power dynamics, with who runs the place, like what department is where the money flows, things like that. And you have to understand like, is it going into your department? So there are some companies that are finance oriented or R&D oriented or sales oriented or marketing oriented. And if you're not in that department, you might not be the primary decision maker for projects in your company. And if that irks you, then you have a problem. You have to either move to that department or you have to move out of that company and into somewhere else.
That's fair. So I want to ask you a few things about resumes. I'm just very, very, very curious about this. So I was going through your articles and I was going through some things, but there's some questions that I still had and I want to ask again. First question is, what's the most important part of a resume?
Most important part is providing context. I think a big problem everyone has is they write in acronyms or they say terms that only people from their org or from their course or from their school would understand. And that's making the assumption that the HR has the exact same background as you. It's making the assumption that the hiring manager also knows that. Like if you said like ADMU CTM like program management, nobody knows what that is. You have to really spell out every single acronym. That's the number one thing. Next is also saying that like, this is our flagship project, but you're not saying that it's our flagship project. By the way, we're also the biggest org. By the way, we also have the most number of members this year. Like that sounds a lot better than just saying it's our flagship project.
Right. What's the most odd resume you've ever had to change?
Well, there's so many, but I think the funnest and oddest resume that I've had to change was someone was applying to be a marketing creatives, and in their spare time they raced cars for fun. They wanted to they wanted to highlight that as well. So as part of their creatives reel and part of their resume, we had to incorporate cars. And so like he made this highlight reel of him racing down, I think S-Lex or something, in his car as fast as possible. Then like coming out of the car, taking off the shade, and then telling him like, pick me, choose me, something like that. And then I was just like watching, thinking, I can't believe I have to provide like comments and edits on this. Like I just like closed my eyes for a second because I was like, I can't look at it. But everyone he sent it to loved it. They said like, we're picking you, we're choosing you. And I was like, I can't believe it worked. But
so it worked. It worked out for him.
It worked so well. Like we it was originally just a highlight reel, and then I told him you need to flash some like key achievements with like your speedometer or things like that, and then it just really worked because it worked with it. Like I was like, when you show shots of like you going at 100 kph, also show shots of like other stuff you've done and things like that. So it's like, video resumes are some of the oddest and funnest things that I've started to fix. It's a new trend. I don't like it, but like it's a new trend.
Why don't you like video resumes?
I think there's a lot of bias in it as well. Like if you're good looking, it's going to come across better. If you have a nice background, it's going to come across better. So I think it disadvantages people who don't have as pretty a life and as good a resources as others.
That's fair. So what does a good resume look like?
A good resume showcases your methodology and your results for everything. Like you say that, let's say you raised 6 million pesos for your first business, but you didn't say that, I went through 100 investor meetings. I met with 100 potential VCs. I met with 100 of all of these. I followed up. I did the work. I presented research. I made this deck. Because it's easy to show the results. It's so hard to show all of the work that came to make those results.
Yeah. The process it took to get there.
Yeah, that's so important to add. Like everyone always forgets that. And I always tell people, even if the project never took off, even if it got canceled like 75% of the way, still add it in. Just add a note that said it was canceled midway because of budget cuts or things like that. Because it's still work you did. And it's still valid of your experience.
And it's still valuable experience you have. So I agree with that. So other than that, let's go a bit back to school times. I came across this article and I really, really want to ask you. So do grades matter?
It depends on what you want to do after college. So if you had asked me straight out of college, I would say it doesn't matter. It's going to, just be one part of your application. But now I realize, like, let's say you want to go work abroad. You want to go to school abroad. They do matter because they provide some context about you. Schools abroad have no idea what Ateneo is off the bat.
Okay, yeah.
But they know what a GPA is. And they know that, if you have a 2.7 out of 4 and you come from a third world, from a school we don't know, what does that mean if you come to our school? Or things like that. So it's a signifier. I think it's also a good signal of like, how good are you at following rules and like jumping through hoops? Those aren't bad things. They sound like bad things. But, it's a necessary skill as well.
Yeah, or how good
and some people excel at it more than others.
How good are you at adapting as well to different situations? Exactly. I would imagine. So for you, in your personal life, would you say that grades impacted your life in a significant way? Or was it mostly the work you did apart from school?
For me, it's always the work I did apart from school. Education on my resume was literally just 2 lines. And it was just like that I went to Ateneo, then I went to BS Commtech. That's it. I didn't write anything else. Everything else was like internship, experience. And everyone was just always asking me like, okay, so what do you do with this blog? And that's generally where all the conversations went. I would say that it's really valuable to have a project that you just work on across years as well, because it shows people like, this is the work. So I have like 2 ways of showing the blog. One is they go straight to it, like to the link. And another way is I have a site that just shows this is how it looked like in 2016. In 2017, 18, these are all the changes that went. These are how I planned it, how I planned the features, how I added these new things to show them that, I did have some sort of strategy going in and some project management. And I did all of this technically like self-funded on its own. Like the money it made on itself is what made it expand.
Yeah. So the Bumpy Career, is it what fulfills you the most? Or is it more of a side thing? Like, where would you rank it in your prioritization?
In my life, most important thing to me is that I'm a good family and friend to all people. That's my goal. That's even my 2021 New Year goal. I said like, be a good friend. That was my goal.
Yeah.
But TVC is really high up. I would say it's in top 5 of my life. It's something I'm extremely proud of because nobody asked me to do this. Nobody was like telling me you should build a blog. If anything, like all the adults in my life are telling me you shouldn't do that because these people are gonna beat you out for the jobs that you're getting. And then I was just like, if they beat me out, it means that I wasn't as good as them in the first place.
Right.
Like I was just winning through veneer or through like marketing. I was just winning because I was good at it. And as I get older, I realize, a job is not a winning losing situation. Like, yes, only one person gets it, but it's not a competition that way.
Right.
So I am incredibly proud of like everything that is done, everything that is achieved, like people that have interacted with it and gotten value out of it. Like really something that will make me happy if I died tomorrow.
That's nice to hear. That's really nice to hear. There's something though that you kind of stepped away from, which you talked about a bit when you came on, was that you're
Mm-hmm.
no longer doing as much content marketing anymore. And I understand that completely.
Mm-hmm.
Why'd you
Mm-hmm.
decide to not focus on that anymore?
One primary thing is like time.
Uh
So
huh.
my job now is a lot more hands-on. And
Mm-hmm.
then two, I decided I really wanted to grow TBC differently. So with that came that it needed more time and attention and also like consulting with other people about it. Because I had been doing content marketing consulting for not just Philippine companies, but also for like some American ones, some Canadian ones.
Right.
And what they would always say to me is that, you know, you're really good at this. We really like you.
Mm-hmm.
But like, why don't you just go and do your blog full time? Like, it sounds like it would make so much money.
Uh
Because
huh.
in America and Canada, people who do this, they make so much money. Like, they can
Okay.
live as a millionaire because
Wow.
there it's a lucrative business. But
Right.
for me, it's like, it wasn't a business, it was like a blog. I was like, I don't understand. So it's more of like them explaining, like, hey, okay, so you need to look like at these sites. This is what they're doing here. This is how they make money. Figure it out. So, very grateful that people were just willing to just explain to me like this is what you're sitting on as well.
Yeah. So is that something you're ever gonna do, or do you think you're
Yeah,
ever
so
gonna do
I'm
that?
building like the product suite of TVC.
Uh huh.
So I'm building like an online course of it that just says all of my thoughts already.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I do consulting, I usually say the same thing again and again.
Right.
And my partner told me that don't you get tired of saying the same thing again and again? Why can't you just send them a video? And I always tell him like I like talking, so I'm
Yeah.
fine with saying the same thing again and again, but I hate writing the same thing again and again. So that's why it's
Okay.
easy for me to decide to make something a blog post. It's hard for me to decide to make something a video.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. No, because I get you completely, because like every room is different, every
Mm-hmm.
interaction is different, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd want to tackle it in a slightly different way depending on the
Exactly.
audience. So is that what you do with every talk?
Yeah, I think everyone is also very different. So every student of like TBC, I really talk to them one on one. Like I know what's their end goal, what are they struggling with at the start. I've seen their resumes. We've gone through everything together. And for a lot of these people, like I'm the one person they can be totally honest with
Right.
because they can't really tell their friends or their family because unfortunately a lot of times our friends and family will turn the conversation to be about themselves
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
they'll say yeah how can you be struggling with that, I'm over here struggling with
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like when they speak to me, I don't have an agenda. My only goal is that they
Yeah.
reach their end goal and that
Yeah.
they tell a friend about me. That's
Right.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I'm very hesitant to make it into an online course. Like I've really been dragging my feet on it because I'm afraid, like, what if someone doesn't get the right personalized advice?
Yeah. No. Yeah. I get it completely. Completely. Because it's. I think advice is a hard thing to deal with in an online course
Mm-hmm.
setting when it's all the same format.
Mm-hmm.
Um, compared to what you do, which is the context each person is coming from. And I think
Yeah.
that's
And
really,
I'm so
really
big on
important.
context.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like it. It seems like it. Because to me, that's also really important. Like, you need to know, like, if, for example, if I know that someone is not going to starve tomorrow, my advice would be very
Mm-hmm.
different. So I think that what you're doing, while it's a harder model, technically, it's a lot more valuable to the individual. Do
It
you
gets
agree
better
with that?
results. Yeah.
Yeah, it does get better results. So what would you want to see the most in the field of recruiting in the next, let's say, 10, 20 years? You can be idealistic, you could be realistic, but personally, what would you want to see?
Honestly, I would like it that there's a trial test before you start the job. Like you don't get
Ooh.
in through resumes or interviews. They give you a task, you do it, and then they grade
Uh-huh.
you on that. Then they'll talk about everything else.
Right.
Because that way you're not judging people based on like where did they go to school? What did they do before
Oh,
this?
okay.
How
Yeah.
how like do they have similar experience? With the trial test, it's really how do you execute this?
Right.
And you're starting to see that with some companies like Shopee gives a trial test to almost
Mm-hmm.
everybody now that make a marketing campaign in 5 slides. How would you tackle this type of problem? It's
Right.
a faster way to see if someone has that skill set, and I really appreciate it. I would just appreciate if that came before the other filtration systems.
Okay. So the focus would be more oriented into product or outcome rather
You,
than
yeah,
past how do you say it? It's more filtered on that rather than past experiences or
yep,
schools.
yep.
So I know that you told me that you won't mind that if you were to leave the world tomorrow that you'll be happy because peace out, you wrote everything you want to say, all that stuff.
Yeah.
How would you want people to describe you and your work in 10 years?
I would want them to say it was revolutionary for that time, but it's so basic now because the field's grown that far. They've learned that much more. There's more valuable advice coming out there. Like if they say this is still so valuable today, it means that we haven't moved forward. We haven't like made any progress. It's still the same exact
Mm.
system now to then. Um, yeah, I would like them to just say that pioneer for her time, so outdated today. That's the dream.
I think that's really interesting because your goal is change, and if you do want change, then that means
It
that
means
your
that
own
I'm the old
views
guard. I have to go.
exactly. You know what? That's a bit of a revelation for me. That's really really interesting. All right. Other than that, are you doing anything else that interests you other than the recruiting, other than your job? What do you do? For example, what are you gonna do after this call ends?
I am gonna go and try to figure out how to do the online course. Like I have the outline and all of it. I'm just really like reticent to pull it out. Um, there are a lot of things I still want to build and write.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I want to make like what's brand manager no one.
Okay.
Everyone wants to go into brand management, but nobody knows like what is it really. So I was like, well, I know a lot of brand managers. Why don't we
Mm-hmm.
just ask them to write down what it is they do and then show everyone else? Okay, this is what you have to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Because like nobody knows it. You have to do data analysis. You have to have a good idea of finance and P&L
Mm-hmm.
before you become a brand manager at like FMCGs.
Right.
What else am I doing? So I started also a startup with a friend in America where we're just going to like outsource work here to the Philippines, and that's also something that
Oh,
we're getting started
interesting.
on because I realize there's a lot of great people who are in the province who don't want to come to Manila to work. So
Yeah.
I was like, well, why don't they just do really great remote roles? So let's figure it out.
Right.
So it's like a decentralized BPO roughly.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. What do you do for fun?
I like to read romance novels of enemies to lovers. That's my idea of fun. Like it's my absolute favorite. Like I want them to argue. I want there to be really like actual hatred. And then they're slowly like, oh my gosh, they're actually kind of good looking. And then afterwards they're like, oh my gosh, I think I have a crush. And then afterwards they're like, I can't live without you. Also, I can't live with you, but something's
Yeah,
gotta
yeah, yeah.
give. That's like my favorite. I love everyone like arguing and getting there.
Where did
I
that
also like watching
fascination
TV shows like that.
where did that fascination come from?
I'm like trying to think of all of the media I liked as a child, where the couples, there's usually my very, very favorite type is like one of them super stoic and quiet. The
Uh-huh.
other one is like very energetic and like always talkative. And like they're always just together and it somehow
Uh-huh.
works. Then I realized like, it's happened to my life. My partner is very stoic, very
Okay.
quiet. His face is like a perpetual frown. All of our friends say his first impression absolutely terrifying because he looks
Really?
very disinterested and
Okay.
scowling to others. I'll
Okay.
send you a photo of him later just so you can like see. And like I'm here. I'm small. I'm always smiling. I'm energetic.
What's
And
what's
then
the most famous what's the most famous example of that couple type?
there's so many. But like off the top of my head, I would say it's like Raven and Beast Boy from like the Teen Titans that was
Oh,
popular when we
okay.
were young. It's like
Okay.
that.
I remember
That's
that. I
like
do
my
remember
thing.
that. All right.
It's like my absolute favorite. I was like, how do they stand each other? I love it.
All right. What are some misconceptions about you that people just No, yeah, what are some misconceptions about you?
Uh, I think one misconception is that like I am super ambitious and with a plan and I know exactly what I'm going to do next. Everything I've done is because I was just open and available for like whatever opportunity came by. I have no plan. I have no idea what I'm doing like in a month. I don't know what I'm doing next year.
Yeah.
And it's like future planning is not my cup of tea. I just do whatever looks fun and interesting.
Right. I'm a similar way. I just like to do stuff. I'm like,
Yeah, I just
yeah.
don't want to like think about it. And I am also like very big on let's just start the project. Let's just figure it out along the way.
I'm the same way. Exactly how I started my business, how I started this podcast, all of that stuff. It's just like, hey, I kind of want to do it.
Yeah, and then everyone tells you you need to create a plan first. You need to have like an idea of how it's gonna be funded. You have to know all of these things. And I'm like, we'll just figure it out.
Yeah, when I heard, because I initially wanted to take a business course in college. I ended up taking pol sci, which I love, by the way. But I wanted to take initially a business course, and then I heard that you have to do like 50-page business like plans. And I was just like, I don't want to do that. So I just want to do it. So that's what ended up happening.
One of my favorite parts of like college was I realized early on when we make those plans as a group, the writing is super disjointed because a different person is writing every single chapter. So it's really, I didn't realize it then, but then professors have a hard time too because you're reading in one voice and suddenly it becomes like completely different. So you have to keep being able to read. And so early on, I would just tell the groups, okay, we can either divide it by chapter or you guys divide it by chapter. And then you have to pass it to me a week before and I will rewrite everything into one voice.
Yeah.
And then everything will make a lot easier. And so like that was just my favorite part of it all. Like I really enjoyed doing that. I would end up doing that as well for like other people. Other people would just pay me. They would be like, we've written the whole paper. It's just really, really bad altogether. You have to fix it. And then I'm like, okay. So it was like a paper doctor.
Nice. So you were able to just do it. When did you know that you loved writing?
I've always liked writing since I was like in grade school. I always wanted to be a writer. There's notebooks filled with all sorts of writing here at home that when I look at it, I'm just like gonna close it very slowly and then like store it far away.
Oh, that's nice.
But like ever since I was young, I've always like really enjoyed doing things like that. And you know, one of my dreams is like to be a New York Times bestseller. And my dream before was to be like an editor for Simon and Schuster or Penguin House. Then I realized, no, all those jobs are in America. They're not really here. So I have to realign my whole plans.
You're right. Last few questions. What would be the biggest advice that you'd give somebody who's still trying to make it in the world or not quite sure where he or she should land in terms of a career or a profession?
I would say that if you have the time and the space, I would suggest you do internships or projects in all sorts of fields, in whatever you're interested in. Like give yourself a whole year. I call it the Eat, Pray, Love year. I don't know if you know the reference or if younger people know the reference. But roughly, it's a movie with Julia Roberts. She goes off for like a whole year to eat, pray, love, and she goes to like Italy, India, Indonesia to find herself. And I was like, do the same thing, but only with internships and projects. Like give yourself 3 months, 4 months to really go all into something and then come out of it and decide if you still want to keep doing it or not. Right. How I always recommend is that you have a set list of reflection questions that you ask yourself every certain time period. And then at the end of a bigger time period, you just review all of them and then start seeing what are the patterns, what are the things that you like or dislike. Because when you rely on just your memories, you see things rosily. Like you forget how much you cried during this internship. You forget how much you hated this person once you stop talking to them every day. But when you write it down and everything's fresh, like you can't really deny the things that you were feeling and saying at that time. Yeah,
you're right. I do understand where you're coming from because I write every day. I write just a page. I try to write a page of whatever. Like I just try to write a page. About a week ago or a few weeks ago, I went through my old notebook. So I found one from 2018. And I was like, Trey, like you're going through so much here. Or I'll be like, yo, that's such a small problem in hindsight.
Exactly. I always tell people, like these are all just small problems. Like when people are fighting over org stuff in Ateneo, I would like think that, you know, we all act like it's gonna end tomorrow. There's gonna be a showdown on SecWalk or something like that. Then like in a year or two, you guys are gonna be the same people at the same Inumans and
Yeah.
like saying, "Hey, remember that time we used to fight?"
Right,
And
right.
then you're like, "Yeah." But
It's crazy. It's crazy.
it's
Even in high
crazy.
school, for me, even in high school, there's this friend where we had like a small fight, just verbally, but we had a small fight, and
Mhm.
then like during college we hung out and we were like, hey, remember that we fought, and then we're like, yeah, cool. Like it had no
It's like
bearing.
over.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's over.
it's over. All right. So last one, message for the people that have supported you or love your work, and where can people find you?
So my number one message to all of them is that I hope you guys learn more about yourselves as well throughout all this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
don't just take my advice or anyone's advice blindly. Really think through and take only the parts that would work for you or that feel right to you.
Yeah.
Like, don't take anyone's word as Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And also for like everyone who's been with me from the start, who've seen how TVCs went from like the Warrior Collective to the Bumpy Career to whatever it is going to be in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Like, thank you so much for always like clicking on the website, because just seeing that one person clicked on it at like 2 a.m. and then read 24 blog posts in the go, it
Wow.
makes
Yeah.
me feel like, okay, I've done good today.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
person out there who felt strongly enough like, I'm going to read all of this at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a reason why we changed like the color of the site and also some of like the UX of it. I realized a significant portion of the audience is reading at like 1 to 4 a.m.
Okay.
and they
Yeah.
were gonna blockbuster read everything. So I said, okay, well, it's got to look nicer at dim light and it
Yeah.
should
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
be readable on mobile. So I was like,
Right.
okay, well, we're going to make those changes for them.
Oh, that's nice.
I
I
see
love
you
that.
guys. I see you.
I
I
love
wish you
that
would go to
change.
sleep, but like, there's nothing we can do.
Because you just imagine like maybe a fourth year college student at like 1 a.m. just being like, what do I do next? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then they just like find it and they're like, okay,
And then you just go
next,
through all of it
next,
like, oh,
next,
next, next,
next. I'm like,
next.
oh my God.
All right, Justin, you can find her on the Bumpy Career. Is that the
.com.
bumpycareer.com? Yeah, it
Yep.
is. And your Twitter?
And on my Twitter at Justine LT Chua. You can also find that on like Instagram and LinkedIn. So if you need inspiration, you can just go look there and see this is all you can achieve too, even with shitty grades.
All right, Justin, thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate you and your time.
Thank you so much as well, Trey. I had a lot of fun.
This was really, really fun. It's so fun to have practical advice from somebody who's been through it and who has just so much wisdom actually, like regarding the topic, regarding the process and what to do and all that stuff. And I'm sure that if something ever interesting happens, I will have you back on. Or if I have more questions, I will just have you back on. And
Yes.
I love you being a part of this. Thank you so much. Catch her on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and thebumpycareer.com. Thanks, Justin.
Thanks so much.